Welcome to Session 7 of Marketing Step by Step. In this session, we're going to learn about the distinction between branding and response marketing. There are two main marketing philosophies, two basic approaches to marketing. The first is what we might call branding, and the second is what we might call response marketing. Branding is about getting people to remember your name, getting your name out. Response is about getting people to take action and buy. And what we're really talking about here is direct versus indirect marketing. The reason it's called direct response marketing is because it's based on two key ideas that are very powerful when used together. The first is marketing directly to a prospective customer, and the second is asking for a response. So direct response. We're marketing directly to our customer, and we're asking for a response. Branding is indirect marketing in that its intention isn't to generate action now. The intention is to help people remember your name so that when they have a need come up, maybe they remember you, or if they see your store or your service, they have a good feeling because they've seen your advertisements several times. Now, I'm not saying that branding doesn't work. What I am saying is that branding is not usually for startup businesses, almost never, because it's so expensive. Al Ries and Jack Trout say that before you go on a branding rampage, make sure you've got at least $1 billion to spend on your branding campaign, because that's how much you need to really drive your brand into the mind of your customers. Now, the good news about direct response marketing is that if you do it right, you get branding for free because you're talking about your products and services and you're asking for a response, and those that aren't responding are still seeing your marketing. So you actually get the branding value for free. The objective with response marketing is conversion, not what we call continuation. In professional sales, a continuation is when you set up a follow-up or talk about a follow-up, but you don't actually make the sale. In marketing and in sales, a conversion is when your prospective customer takes action, ideally buying what you're offering. In response marketing, we're aiming for conversion, not for continuation. So why is branding so popular? And why is it that everyone thinks that marketing is branding and that that's what you're supposed to do, is get your name out there and make sure that everyone knows your name? Well, branding is very, very appealing to what we might call marketing chickens. Branding is very, very appealing to what we might call marketing chickens. Most people default to branding or getting their name out because it's the easy road. You never have to face direct rejection if you never ask for a sale, which makes branding a very appealing route for most business owners. You can always blame someone else when you don't take personal responsibility for sales. Now, let me say that last part again, because this is a critical distinction for you to understand if you're ever going to go on and become a professional marketer and sell lots of your product and service. You can always blame someone else when you don't take personal responsibility for sales. Marketing, selling, getting customers, it's the key activity. It's the key money-making activity in business. And when you don't take responsibility for it yourself, it's always easy to blame others. So, for example, if you hire an advertising agency to create a branding campaign and you give them thousands or tens of thousands or hundreds of thousands of dollars and they run it and it has really beautiful pictures of you and your company, and it's really well designed, and then no one calls, well, really you can just blame them for it. It's their fault. But when you take personal responsibility for sales, personal responsibility for marketing and getting customers, well, then you can't blame anyone else because it was your job to know how to do it in the first place. So branding's the easy road. It's the way that most people want to go. It appeals to the ego. It appeals to status. It appeals to that part of you that wants everyone to know who you are, to be someone in the world. It seems like the shortcut. But the reality is, for most businesses, branding efforts do not lead to sales. What leads to sales is response marketing. Now, direct response marketing, or response-based marketing, has its root in direct face-to-face selling. The best way to think about a good direct response marketing piece or campaign is to think of it like a real salesperson, only multiplied and automated. The techniques of direct response have been tried, tested, and refined over 100 plus years. It's now considered a science by the pros. By the way, Claude Hopkins, at the beginning of his book, Scientific Advertising, he says that advertising has now reached the level of science, where it's no longer just trying things and hoping that something sticks. It is now a science. And he wrote those words almost 100 years ago. Okay, so direct response has been around. It's been tried, tested, and refined over 100 plus years. And it is considered a science by the professionals. And what you will find is that most of the great direct response marketers, from Claude Hopkins to David Ogilvy and Eugene Schwartz and so forth, at some point did direct face-to-face selling in their lives. How are the two connected? Why is it that the big direct response marketers have often had face-to-face selling experience? Well, again, the best way to think about good direct response marketing is to think of it like a real salesperson that you are putting inside of your website, your video, your mailing piece, whatever it is that you're doing to sell, and you're sending it out only to qualified prospects, just like you'd send a real salesperson. When you do face-to-face selling and you learn how it works, you realize that some things work and some things don't, and most things don't, and there's a process to it. There's a process that professional salespeople use to sell, and when you learn that system and then you put that sequence into your marketing, that's what gets response. That's what closes sales. That's what gets conversion. In-person sales is the greatest paid research that you can do. Most people are afraid of selling their products and services face-to-face. In fact, it's the best possible research you can do for your business. You'll never learn more specific, powerful things you can use in your marketing than when you sell. Now, most of us don't like the idea of selling. Right? We're trying to do marketing so that we don't have to sell. Oh no, now you're telling me that I have to sell. Well, the good news is that when you learn professional sales and you learn how to do it like a pro, it's not manipulative. And the great news is you get to go out and do research, but you're making sales while you're doing research, so you actually get paid to do it. I recommend to my clients, coaching members, and so forth, students, that they talk to at least 3 or 4 people a day and ask them what their biggest fears, frustrations, wants, aspirations are. Really get inside the mind of their prospect. Even better is to do 3 or 4 sales presentations where at the end you actually sell your product or service, because then the rubber meets the road. Then you find out what's stopping people from taking action. Then you find out what the internal objections are and how they're coming up inside of the mind of the prospect. Then you really get the dirt the goods, the material that you can use to help people buy stuff that they really want to buy and solve their problems. I recommend almost unconditionally that everyone invest time every day for at least a period of a couple of years in their life talking to prospective customers and selling them products and services one-on-one. There's almost nothing better that you can do in life than to do this, because you get a lot of insights into how the human mind and decision-making system works. You get to understand the needs of your customers and your prospects at a level that almost no one understands. And you learn the words, the phrases that they use. In other words, you just become a marketing powerhouse by doing one-on-one sales. Now, as I mentioned before, you don't want to just imitate the big companies. What you do want to do is do what the big successful companies did, not what they do now. Don't imitate the big companies or assume that what they do will work for you. If you want to imitate them, go back to when they began and do what they did, not what they're doing now. And guess what they did when they started out? Right? What they did when they started was usually sales. Sales has gotten a bad name over the past several decades. Professional selling looks nothing like the manipulative hustling that we associate with the used car salesman. Professional selling is about discovering and developing needs, then matching needs to solutions. For more, I recommend the book Spin Selling by Neil Rackham. Spin Selling by Neil Rackham, Rackham. If you just go online and you type in Spin Selling, S-P-I-N, selling, you'll find the book. It's the best $15 or $20 that you could invest learning sales. It's based on real research, and it has an excellent methodology that anyone can follow. I've been using it for years, and it gets my highest recommendation. And what Neil Rackham teaches you inside the book is that professional salespeople are not high-pressure closers and hucksters. Professional salespeople, the ones that make hundreds of thousands of dollars a year and more, are professional researchers. When they meet a potential customer, they ask what their biggest problems are, what their fears, their frustrations. They ask the other problems that those are causing. They dig very deep. They find out the outcome that the customer would want and what it would mean to have their problem solved. And they let the customer give them all the information they need. And this is really the power of professional sales. So when you look back at what big companies did when they were small to become successful, it's usually sales. Sales has gotten a bad name, but fortunately, professional selling, when you learn it, looks nothing like manipulative hustle. It really is about discovering and developing needs and then matching needs to solutions. So maybe you can start thinking about the idea of how you're going to be building your customer getting systems in your business. And maybe you could open your mind to the idea that from now on, every day, you're going to invest a couple of hours learning about your customers, talking to them, finding out what their specific fears and frustrations are, asking them the questions to dig deeper, writing down the words and the phrases that they use so that you can use them, creating a customer avatar, and then, to take it to its kind of highest evolution, actually begin selling your products and services at the end of these sales interactions. Turn them into money-making, turn them into paid research by taking this discovery process and then adding a little sales pitch on the end. Again, you'll learn more about your customers, you'll learn more about psychology, you'll learn more about what works and what doesn't. And critically, you'll learn more about how to create a marketing piece that will speak to all of your customers than I think any other activity that you could do. And finally, your first marketing should be in the spirit of direct sales. Don't aspire to have people know your name or to be famous. Instead, aspire to have people who have a need come to you to buy what you're selling. Instead of trying to become a famous brand, work to sell your product to one person at a time, then replicate this direct response system to grow. In other words, replicate this one-to-one system in marketing pieces, websites, and videos. And what I'm suggesting that you do here is you crawl inside the mind and emotions, thoughts, fantasies, behaviors, the secret world of your customer, and you get so familiar with it that you now can become the customer anytime you want, and then ultimately create a customer avatar that you create a dialogue with and that you create an experience so that anyone that has a need that your product serves can engage in a dialogue, a discussion, and go through a scripted process that helps them make an intelligent, informed buying decision that's good for them. And when you take your successful one-to-one sales process and you turn it into a successful direct response marketing system of ads, websites, videos, follow-up emails, other sequences, upsells, this is when you get the real power of direct response marketing. So market for response, not for recognition. Appeal to the interest of your customer, not to your own ego. Don't fall for the chicken way that is to put your name and your picture and your logo and to make everything look really fancy so that you can get the ego hit. Instead, do what works to get response, no matter what it is, and you'll be more successful in your marketing endeavors. So let's do another exercise. Becoming a direct response marketer. Okay, so take out your exercise that says Becoming a Direct Response Marketer across the top, and let's dive in. There are two fundamental approaches to marketing. The first is branding, or getting your name out and becoming famous so that people have you top of mind. The second approach to marketing is called direct response because it is focused on finding individual prospective customers and triggering them to respond to your offer. It's critical that you develop your direct response marketing skills and develop the ability to sell products one-to-one in any situation, niche, or environment. So answer these three questions on this exercise. First, where have you become convinced that branding is synonymous with marketing? Look back in your life and see, have you had education, impressions? Have you had influences that convinced you unconsciously that branding was synonymous with marketing? Write them down. Next, where do you have a bias or prejudice against salespeople and marketers? Where do you have a bias or prejudice against salespeople and marketers that you must overcome? Okay, so where did you get impressions or prejudice or bias against salespeople and marketers that you must overcome? And then finally, what will you have to do internally in order to begin finding prospects where they are, then asking them to buy from you? What are you going to have to do on the inside so that you go out and find prospects where they are proactively and then look them in the eye and ask them to buy from you? What are you going to need to do? Complete this exercise, and I'll see you in the next session of Marketing Step by Step.